I'm Sandra. I'm an anthropologist and a writer, and I contracted COVID in March 2020. Prior to catching COVID, I was a healthy person, although I was very prone to catching infections as a child. But overall, I would consider myself a healthy person. This long COVID really displays a lot of different symptoms. Um, they don't seem to be related at all. And so the the cause of that have to be it has to be the brain. It has to be in the brain. So at my worst, I was fully disabled. I was in a wheelchair. I could hardly move. um, I couldn't take care of myself. My mother needed to care for me. I couldn't take care of my daughter. In February 2020, my daughter came home from nursery with a high temperature, and it wouldn't go down despite paracetamol. And she was very weak, very tired. The next day, the fever was gone, but the fatigue was still there, and she started experiencing abdominal pain. My first symptom appeared within a couple of days after that. So I began experiencing difficulties swallowing while lying down in bed at night. Within 2 weeks, I had developed a full spectrum of symptoms of COVID-19. I woke up with a cough. I had difficulties breathing. I had a fever. My pulse was high. I'd lost my sense of taste and smell. I had a headache. My eyes were red and itching. One ear was totally blocked. I was experiencing gastrointestinal issues. I had a brain fog, amnesia. I suffered from fatigue and weakness, and I had become slightly sensitive to light and sound. I started experiencing numbness in my hands and face. I developed insomnia, and these were only the major symptoms. And the fact that I had difficulties breathing, which is again something I've never experienced before, made me pretty sure that this was COVID-19. And almost at the same time, my father began experiencing the exact same symptoms. And I called the hospital the next day, and they confirmed that we were likely suffering from COVID-19. But at that time, only hospitalized patients requiring oxygen were tested. So I didn't receive my diagnosis until September 2020. And I really grilled my GP at that point, presenting all types of data from Sweden and from abroad, recounting what thousands of other people were experiencing at the same time in Sweden alone. And by that time, I was also active in the newly founded Swedish COVID Society. So being knowledgeable about my condition and being a researcher by education gave me a slight advantage in my encounters with the health practitioners. But unfortunately, there are so many other people suffering from long COVID out there whose symptoms are only psychologized. But then, with my first encounter with healthcare in March, we were told to stay at home, to rest and drink plenty of liquids, and then we would be fine in a week or two. But we didn't get better. We only got worse. We had to try asthma medications because we just couldn't breathe. And the oxygen level in our blood was fine, but we felt like we were suffocating. I couldn't work anymore. Me and my daughter moved into my parents' house. My mother became the full-time carer of the two of us, plus my dad. Luckily, she only experienced mild symptoms for a couple of weeks. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened. After about a month, I started developing severe chest pains, and my lungs were constantly aching. And this is when I was sent to the COVID emergency ward at the Central Hospital for the first time. So in 6 months, I was sent there at least 10 times. And the doctor suspected lung embolism, and they did a lung scan and took several blood tests, but it all came back negative. And not long after that, the neurological symptoms began. I started losing control over my legs. They just wouldn't do what I wanted them to do, as if the signals from my brain didn't reach all the way. I was having difficulties balancing, and at times I was too weak to stand up. So moving from my bed to the bathroom, which normally only takes a couple of seconds, would take several minutes. I would need to stop and rest several times. I had to hold on to furniture and to walls so I wouldn't fall down. And I also noticed that my left side was much weaker than my right side. And a new, very strange symptom started appearing. I began experiencing a burning sensation underneath my skin. First, occasionally in my limbs, but eventually the feeling was, constantly there in all parts of my body. And paradoxically, I also began to experience a cold sensation underneath my skin, as if someone had been pouring ice cold water underneath the skin. And that feeling also increased in intensity and spread throughout my whole body. And I was also displaying more signs of dementia. I forgot how to write by hand. I couldn't remember what the letters looked like or how to shape them with a pen. My arms and hands were trembling as if I had Parkinson's disease. I was in a wheelchair, or else I was walking very slowly with the support, and the pain was just starting to come. I had pain in my shin bones, pain in my thighs, pain in my back, pain in my neck. And the pain was so paralyzing, I didn't know what to do. My sensitivity to light and sounds, just exploded. I had to wear sunglasses indoors. I couldn't watch a screen. I had to wear ear covers from time to time. I reacted to all smells. I had to wear an allergy mask 24 hours a day. I lost my voice. I had tons of thick, gluey saliva and mucus in my throat and nose. I could only eat about 6 food items. I was extremely weak, but still, most of my tests and exams, came out normal. My pulse was obviously very high, and my blood pressure had gone haywire. So I had all the typical signs of POTS. But they still couldn't find anything wrong with me. In addition to that, my color vision was becoming distorted. So something that I knew was a certain color suddenly looked a different color to me. And I more or less lost control of my left eye. So this was the peak of my long COVID. I've never been so miserable in all my life. And I was really convinced at that time that my body wouldn't be able to stand this much longer. When Cecilia told me about the limbic system, and how it works and how it can affect the body, and the flight or fight response, that sort of made sense to me, because my body had gone through a very traumatic event with the COVID-19 infection. We all know what COVID-19 can do in people. It's very different. All the coronaviruses are very different from other viruses that we know. And so it really made sense that my body was still reacting to an event that had already happened, and that my body thought, or rather my brain thought, that this event was still happening, and reacting to that. I started doing the DNRS program in February this year. On the very first day I started doing the DNRS program, I got a sort of explosion of the sense of taste in my mouth without even eating anything, and I hadn't been able to feel the taste of anything for a year. In the first week after starting the DNRS program, I really felt I had the energy to start moving again. So I started going for walks, first in the close neighborhood and then further away. And so this was only days after I started the program. In March, I could start to work part-time. In May, I started working full-time again. And today I lead a very active life. I go for walks every day. I go jogging. I play with my daughter. I can cook every day. I have energy to go on outings and take care of the house, household chores. Everything that I couldn't do before, I can do now. And I'm about to start a new position that I never thought I would be able to do so soon after having been so ill. I'm in touch with a handful of people who are also following the DNRS program, also COVID long haulers, and all of them are experiencing a positive change. Two of them have recovered fully within a few weeks. I would say to people who are suffering from long COVID to give neuroplasticity training a go. It might be difficult to comprehend the basics, the concept behind neuroplasticity training, but then again, it doesn't really matter why and how it works as long as it can make you feel better. So I would recommend trying this non-invasive, very easy to follow program. It may take longer for some, but it can change your life. It can give your life back. I'm fully restored, and I'm looking forward to a lot of adventures with my daughter.